Hello, I'm Chuck Phillip with South Alabama Home Inspections. Welcome to another edition of Southern Home Talk. And really, it's more of an edition of where is the best places to eat in this area. And so I'm fixing to turn onto the Causeway heading toward Mobile. This intersection right here is called Bridgehead. This used to be the Cochran Bridge all the way across the bay. And that's why on a lot of the maps you'll see it being called Bridgehead back there at the top of the hill. Mr. Fuller tried to get that removed from the maps back in the 60s, and it may even be during the 50s and wasn't able to do it. So anyway, we're heading westbound on the Causeway. This can also be called Highway 90, and you can see some cars that are merging there to the right. Those cars are actually coming from back at Highway 90 area around I-10. That road runs underneath the bluff of the old Spanish Fort subdivision, or the old estates. Notice how they call this kind of a parallel Highway 90 and 98. And there's only one other red light that you may encounter going to Mobile. Well, I guess two if you count the one at the tunnel. There is a red light at the Alstel shipyard down there that they put in a few years back, but it's mostly red light free the whole way. And the traffic usually moves pretty good on this road as well. Now to the left is Mayor State Park. If you know anyone that has a RV or a camper that needs a place to park it, that's a good place to be. That's a Bay transmission. I recommend that place. I had the transmission in both my Jeep and truck rebuilt there. It cost a little bit of money to do, but at least they got it done correctly. And so that truck right there you see in the right hand lane, that's one of the trucks that if there's any one broke down on the Bayway, they'll actually come and try to render assistance. And I'm going across the Appalachian River. That octagon building that you see there is called Traders. It's a bar. It's been there for many, many years. In fact, that is the oldest establishment on the Causeway. It actually goes back to the 1950s, but it was in a different area of the Causeway back during that time. And there's the Bluegill restaurant. It's got a really nice entertainment venue back behind it. They got the original Oyster House, which has really good steamed shrimp, really good. I believe this is going to eventually become something over here. It used to be called Drifters. That's Ed's Seafood Shed, which burnt down, or not completely burned down, but it also caught fire a while back. And so I'm not sure what the status of that's going to be. I'm going to get in the right lane. It's always good to stay in this right lane because you never know who's going to want to pass. And not only that, I probably should slow down a little bit anyway so I can kind of explain some things that's coming up. What you're looking at is the Delta back there, and you can get airboat rides. I think you can pick them up here on the Causeway. You can also get guided tours. It's really beautiful. If you ever get a chance to go do that, I recommend it. Now, this is another place where you can get onto I-10. About halfway down the Causeway, you can enter I-10 at this point. I usually don't do it because I have no way of knowing what the traffic is like between this point here and the Wallace Tunnel. And so I usually wait and take the next entry point to get on that. Just a point here, I recommend you take the Causeway as much as you possibly can, because to me it's just safer. You're kind of trapped up there on that bridge. There's also been some pretty good pile-ups in the past due to fog. We get some heavy fog down here occasionally. Now this is Ralph and Caco's. Now the one in New Orleans is really good, and I've only been to this one time since this one opened. It's more of a New Orleans style seafood restaurant. There's Felix's. They're pretty good. Got excellent service. Got R&R. If you ever need crawfish, this is the place to get them. And they have really good steamed shrimp there. Really good. That used to be the old Woony Bird radio station there. No, that's it. This used to be the Woony Bird, WMOB. I think that was put there in the 30s. But this is Cafe Del Rio. That's a very good Mexican restaurant down here on the Causeway. There's another one back there towards Spanish Fort. And of course, there's the Battleship there to the left. And if you ever haven't seen this before, it looks like they're doing some refurbishing on it. But it's a pretty big park. They got a submarine there, airplanes, and a museum. And so you can pretty much make an entire day viewing all the things that are at Battleship Park. They usually have quite a few events there as well all throughout the year. So it's also a good place to maybe look into. Maybe if you had a big function, you can go there and maybe rent some of those facilities to do that. Okay, we're entering Mobile city limits. And there's the entrance to the Battleship Park right there. I think they charge a small fee to come in there and park, and another fee to actually access the battleship and the submarine. And there's no more restaurants on this part of the Causeway. This is that other red light I was telling you about that just turned green. So really that's it. Just this light here and the one at the tunnel coming up is about the only light you're gonna have to deal with coming to Mobile. Now this is where I would get onto I-10 if I was wanting to bypass downtown. I would take this entrance onto the I-10 Bayway at this point, because you're right there at the tunnel, and so you could bypass a lot of congestion if it's congested up there at the top. And like I said earlier, you know, this whole span was called the Cochrane Bridge back when this was built. I think it was built around 1926, and it was completed around, I think it was completed in 1926. I believe that's when it was completed. And there's the Bankhead Tunnel. That was built in 1936, or it might have been 39. That's what we call the old tunnel. They used to have a guard there that would collect tickets if you had to pay a toll to go through it. And we're starting to get down to the part of the state docks and more of an industrial area. I'm going to find a place to turn around. I'm not going to go all the way down this. But this leads to what's called the African Cochrane Bridge, or the Africatown Bridge. It's a really high bridge, and that's another way to get to Highway I-65 too. So I'm going to see if I can find a place to get turned around. My dad used to work at Scott Paper Company back in the 60s and 70s, and this is how I used to go to get to a Scott Paper Company. It's pretty much a skeleton of what it was. It's not an international paper company, no longer exists. A lot of this community was built around those paper mills, and when they dried up, a lot of people have left the area as a result, and also include Brooklyn Air Force Base as well. Okay, we're back eastbound now on the Causeway, or the Cochrane Africatown Roadway, or Highway 90, whatever you want to call it. Like I say, most of the locals call this the Causeway, at least where it goes all the way to the tunnel. And you can see Austell Shipbuilding up there on the right. There's a lot of people that work there at Austell. See, they're calling it 98 going west there. There's been quite a few trucks that's gotten stuck in that tunnel too. That's because of the clearance at the top. So sometimes you'll find this backed up quite a bit because they can't back out of it. And that's something you have to kind of like watch out for as well. Usually where you see that car turning there, that line can get backed up pretty good ways, and sometimes it's a result of someone getting stuck in the tunnel, or it could be a wreck inside this tunnel too. And so, you know, if we'd have kept going over the Africatown Bridge, that'd have been another way to get to Mobile, to bypass any wreck that may have happened in this tunnel. And so you can actually access I-10 at this point as well if you were heading eastbound and wanted to bypass Spanish Fort. You could actually exit off onto the Daphne exit. So you could get to Spanish Fort from I-10. Just take the Daphne exit and then go north across the interstate. There's a better view of Austell right there. So I get in the right lane. Now, one thing, there's no gas stations on the Causeway. There used to be several of them back, I think, all the way up and through the 80s. There were some gas stations here, so just know that there's no place to fill up. And there's an F4 on top of the sign right there. It's a beautiful park, Battleship Park. Got a B-52 in there. B-52 served in Vietnam. It's got some of the story of that on there. There's a sign for the Oyster House. Now, there was a lot of businesses that got destroyed from past hurricanes because it's such a low-lying area down here. And it's also really shallow in places too out there in that bay. So if you have a boat, you know, I recommend you probably get a tour guide, someone who really knows this area well, to go with you the first few times, because you can be stuck out there, and it's kind of dangerous in some areas as well. Okay, we're back in Baldwin County now. You see the sign there. And so Spanish Fort police jurisdiction is all the way to here. In fact, you'll see the Spanish Fort sign coming up right there. And the Spanish Fort Fire Department is volunteer. It's actually excellent. We've got a fantastic fire department. They do a fantastic job, and they really do have a hard workload they're having to deal with because of the size of this community. And so we're looking at Felix's there. A lot of these restaurants are upstairs because of the flooding, you know, or the potential flooding whenever we get the storms that come through. And that's why some of these restaurants never built back, because they were just washed away completely. This is another way to get to I-10 halfway down going back eastbound. So you could actually pick it back up right here. I try to stay off I-10 as much as possible. You know, the good thing is if you break down on the Causeway, you have a safer area to pull over. It's just real spooky to me to be broke down on that Bayway Bridge and have cars coming by you at 80 miles an hour. Sometimes you'll see people fishing along these walls. Of course, right now, it's a lot. The north wind has blown a lot of the water out. That can happen too. Usually when we get these real strong north winds, it'll blow the water out of here. And if it's low tide, it'll make it even where it's just nothing but mud out there. There's been some talk about opening up parts of this causeway to allow a better water flow through here, so it doesn't fill up any more than what it has. Like I say, you can see that this is a pretty quick drive. I mean, we're only 14 minutes into this video, and I'm already almost to the other side after making a round trip. So this goes to show you how quick you can get to Mobile, especially downtown Mobile. It's quicker in most cases to get to Mobile from Spanish Fort than it is most places out in West Mobile. And I don't know what they're going to do with ads. thinking maybe for sale. Looks like they're working on it. I do recommend the Oyster House if you like steamed seafood, and also R&R. Both of those places are really good for steam. The Bluegill has some fairly decent seafood. It's really got a very good entertainment venue in the back of there, kid friendly. There's Traders right there again. Watering hole for many locals that work in the shipyard. I remember when it was at the old Quonset hut back in the 60s, my mother would go there. She knew what the owner back then was, Ann Clackus, and she would make me these Shirley Temples, and I thought I was highfalutin having one of those tall glass drinks with straw, cherry. Now this place right up here coming up has been there as long as this causeway's been here to my memory, and that's, I used to remember logging trucks parking right there. I guess they would just go there and take a break. Now at one time there used to be some picnic tables there. And so we're coming back up to Mayor State Park, and like I say, even if you live in Spanish Fort, you know, that might be a place you can go and spend the day. It's I think they've cleaned that up pretty good, and you may even be able to go fishing back there as well. And we're starting to get pretty close to the hill, and the reason why the Confederates built the fort where they did is because of that big hill. That was one of the highest points on the eastern shore, and this river we're coming up on was where the Union ships had to come through to get to Mobile, the Blakely River. And so that hill you see right there, that's where Fort McDermott is, and they would fire those big naval cannons down on those Union ships down here below. And this is another Mexican restaurant there, and it's also got volleyball courts. So we're about to climb the hill, and if you was to go to the right, that would take you to I-10 and also take you to 98 going to Daphne and Fairhope. And this is the bridge where that road runs up underneath it. And you can see that sign saying Spanish Fort Boulevard. So Spanish Fort Boulevard is Highway 31. Alright guys, well, we made it back to the top of the hill. I hope you've enjoyed this tour across the causeway. If you get a chance to go down and dine at some of those restaurants, I recommend you go down and try every one of them. You never know which dinner you might like at each one. Thanks for taking the time to watch this, guys. Take care.